Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. We are so glad that you're here with us. My name is Stephen Butler. I'm Executive Director for Compassion Institute. Thank you for being here and joining this live stream. Briefly, our work at Compassion Institute and mission is to advance compassion as a guiding principle and an active force to foster a more caring world. And we do this by designing and delivering programs designed for individuals and organizations to promote their personal and also ultimately societal well being. Thank you for being here at this special time. I'd like to introduce our program director, Apratim Chaudhary. Apratim works at CI to design and develop and deliver those programs, especially in the healthcare systems and beyond. So, Opera, thank you for guiding us through this wonderful session today, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, and welcome everyone. We're so grateful to have you joining us today, whether you're here watching us live or after the fact through our YouTube channel. As Stephen mentioned, I'm Apratim Chaudhary, and I serve as the program director here at Compassion Institute. And before we kick things off, I wanted to name the central theme behind today's conversation. You often might hear the phrase compassion fatigue. It's become quite common, and especially in the spaces of healthcare, education, social services, and even in our personal lives. And compassion fatigue gives language to something that's very real, the exhaustion, overwhelm, the depletion that can arise when we're repeatedly exposed to suffering and challenge in our work and our lives. Today, we'll explore what compassion actually is and how does it differ from empathy or personal distress? What happens when that overwhelm arises? And then what can we do about it? Whether it's grounding, self compassion, or the deliberate compassion training that helps us respond with greater steadiness. I'm fortunate to be joined by two extraordinary teachers and colleagues who I'd like to introduce now. Dr. Erika Rosenberg is a scientist, meditation teacher, and a founding faculty member at Compassion Institute. Her work bridges the science of emotion, contemplative practice, and decades of experience teaching compassion cultivation around the world. Welcome, Erika. And Dr. Shireen Mansouri is a family physician, a senior CCT teacher, and Compassion Institute's health content lead. She brings the perspective of someone who has practiced medicine in demanding clinical environments and has worked extensively with Compassion Institute to help healthcare professionals cultivate compassion without losing themselves in the process. Before we get things started, I'll just mention that if you all have any questions, please reach us at our hotline. It's info@compassioninstitute.com. All right. Thanks, folks.
And you're handing it off to me next? Is that it?
Erika, it's off to you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you. And I want to also add one thing that Apro didn't say is that, we're in a time limited situation, and Shireen and I are both going to be offering some, short teachings and practices. If you have any questions, to save them till the end, as you'll have an opportunity to type them in and hopefully we'll be able to get to them. So, thank you for that great introduction, Apro. What I appreciate is that you named the problem, compassion fatigue. And I think it's very important when we take this title of this session, which is Debunking the Myth of Compassion Fatigue, that we step back for a minute and make sure that we acknowledge that it is a very real problem. This phrase that people use, which we will say is possibly not the best terminology, but it's the phrase for the very real thing that happens when in our work, in our personal lives, we are overwhelmed by being present with suffering. So whether you're in a helping profession and you're constantly, helping, healthcare, you're in social work. This comes up with teachers, or you're caregiving for someone at home, or your life just puts you in the face of a lot of difficulty of others. When you're in that situation, you're not only managing what they're going through, you're also managing how you feel about being in that situation, your own emotional reaction to it, and any empathic connection you might be feeling with the person going through the difficulty. So that's a heavy load. And sometimes we feel overwhelmed. We can't do it anymore. And that's why sometimes the word burnout has been used, and in other times has been called compassion fatigue, because people are in compassionate situations where they're helping others who are going through difficulty and they're wiped out. If we step back another step and think about what compassion means, it helps put all this into context. One definition of compassion, and certainly the one that we work from in the compassion cultivation training, which is the CCT class, which I'm going to be teaching in the fall, and I helped develop with Tubtem Jimpa. Wow, 17 years ago now. Woo! It was 2009. Anyway, the working definition of compassion that we use really is, when you're present with suffering in another or yourself, so keep that in mind, and you feel moved by their suffering. You really take in what someone's going through, you feel moved by it, and motivated to make a difference, to help them, to help alleviate the suffering. So right in there in that definition is the word suffering, that there's suffering in some form that you're in contact with. And there's the empathic element, which is really, we find when we're helping people grow their compassion, that it's very important to visit empathy. That empathy, which can be defined in terms of both shared feeling and cognitive perspective taking, understanding what someone's going through, is a key step in compassion cultivation. It also helps unlock the motivation to make a difference for someone. If you feel moved by what they've gone through, if you know what it's like to go through pain and that you want it to be gone, you don't like to suffer and you want to help them not suffer too, that is a motivational force. However, sometimes that whole reaction to the difficulty that someone is going through can overwhelm us. And that's when we get into this place of what we call compassion fatigue. But we would argue, and I think there's good evidence for this, that is actually not a burning out due to compassion. That is a burning out due to all the demands of the situation you're in, any empathic sharing of feeling you might have with the person or situation you're working with, and your own emotional reaction to all of that. That's a huge load, right? And it can really take its toll on the body. We know that emotions move us. They change our physiology. If there's if something's frightening or difficult or challenging, it can activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is very adaptive for us in short-term short-term difficult or stressful situation. But it's not designed to work over the long term, because it can wipe you out physically. And many of you know that chronic stress, enduring stress, can increase our susceptibility to illness. So we have to be able to notice when we are feeling overwhelmed and do something about it. And that leads me to what I think is a very important piece in this whole discussion, and that is the role of self-compassion. When we're doing compassion cultivation training, we take 2 weeks of the 8-week course, so that's 25% of the course, dealing with how we regard the self. This is very, very important because it plays, self-compassion in particular is compassion directed toward oneself. So what that means is we are noticing our own suffering and tending toward it. Tending to it, taking care of ourselves. I like to talk about it in terms of hygiene for our mental and physical health. Just like we would, bathe ourselves, we feed ourselves, we clothe ourselves. We need to attend to our own suffering. And if you don't do that, how are you going to be able to help others? You might break. So a lot of compassion, what we call compassion fatigue or burnout or getting wiped out from being in these situations of attending to other people's suffering, really comes from a failure for a lot of understandable reasons. I don't mean failure is perhaps too strong a word. I don't want there to be any judgment in it for not attending to your own needs. And we can see how that can happen. Oh, they're in pain. They need food. Anybody who's ever cared for someone who's going through a chronic illness or a terminal illness, or even a baby, right? When's the last time you showered? Did you get a good meal in you? All these things can lead to the situations that lead us to weaken or break. So we need to spend time tending to this thing so that we don't break. So compassion itself, when you have shored up your own skills of caring for yourself and noticing when you are feeling wiped out, it will not lead to this kind of burnout because you are modulating the system. You're taking care of it. I want to share with you, the teacher in me is always here. I'm going to share with you a figure, okay, that we use in CCT that I think has been very helpful in kind of conceptualizing this idea of, avoiding overwhelm. And we're working from the perspective here that when we are cultivating compassion, like we do in the CCT course, we talk about uncovering your natural capacity to care. So working with this capacity to care that we all have inside us. And this is true not just for humans, not just for primates, but all through the animal kingdom. There is profound evidence of caring for others and being connected to others and be concerned for the well-being of others. So we have this inside us. A lot of conditioning and experience can lead us to cover it up, right? So we work on covering it up and we inch into this process by first, learning how to relax and stable the mind, and then visiting the heart space by tapping into the compassion we naturally feel for those we're most easily close to. The idea here is to kind of get comfortable with that feeling. Can you recognize the compassion feeling? Because we're going to try to make it bigger. So you have to start there with, steeping around in that a bit. And then we work on the self for 2 weeks until we start opening our circle of compassion up to people who maybe we don't know very well, strangers who we know superficially, and then inching out a little bigger to people maybe we've had difficulty with. Can we open our hearts there? Because, we have found, and there's research to support this, if we start cultivating compassion for people who we used to have aversive relationships with, it can open up opportunities for growth there, for change, for, speaking in a way that's constructive rather than defensively. So there's a lot of value in opening up to people who are challenging targets for us. So we go through, and then eventually to all the world. Can we send the compassion out there willy-nilly to everybody who needs it, tapping into the suffering and the wish for freedom and the need for peace and joy out there? So that's a tall order. So we have to gauge that opening, just as you might have to gauge how much you're opening to suffering in a particular situation. Some of this involves emotion regulation, knowing that you might have to step back and stabilize. And Shireen's going to take us through some practices for stabilizing in difficult situations. I'm going to take us through a practice in self-compassion, but let me share this figure. I kind of set it up with you. I need to request to share my screen. So hopefully I'll be able to share my screen. Multiple presenters can share. Okay. I'm going to share with you this figure. You see it? I'm assuming you can. Now, this was originally proposed in the 1930s by the Russian psychologist Vygotsky, who studied learning. And some of you might have seen something like this before. We like to bring it up in compassion cultivation to talk about what happens when you start growing that circle. What if you go too far too soon? So we see in the middle, in this inner circle, this little blue zone, what we call the safety zone. And that's where everything's easy and comfortable. This is where a dear friend of mine and a fellow compassion teacher, Margaret Cullen, has given me this example of, she talks about, this is me in my cozy chair with my cat in my lap and a cup of tea, right? This is all the easy space. It's easy to feel compassion and love for people or beings where it's naturally arises and it's cozy and you feel safe. So all of us, this is why in CCT we start with those safe targets. But as we know, if you're going to grow your ability in anything, just like if you're going to get better at, a physical exercise or sport, you got to push yourself. If you always run the same distance, you're not going to become better at running further distances and improve your cardiovascular health. So what you have to push it a little bit, or as I think they use in sports, no pain, no gain. So you got to stretch just a little bit. It's going to be a little uncomfortable, but you got to reach out. This is what we call the growth zone. So you're reaching out of the comfort zone a little bit further, and compassion demands that of us, right? Especially if we're going to start inviting in people we don't know or experimenting with people who are challenging to us. It's like, oh, this is this person I've had bad experiences with. It's going to trigger me. If you've shored up your skills, you're stabilized, you're doing okay, you know how to deal with distress when it arises, then you can abide in that growth zone. And pretty soon it's going to be a lot easier to be there. However, sometimes we reach too far. And that's what we mean about overwhelm. So let's say you're having a bad day, you don't get enough sleep, and then you throw yourself into a super challenging situation. It's easy to go here. So when you work with self-compassion, it's easier to recognize, to gauge, to attend to your own body and mind, and see when you're pushing into overwhelm and pull back. Now, it's easy when you're on your meditation cushion to work with this. Sometimes it's difficult in professional situations, in real life situations, to work with this. However, if we put ourselves, when we're not being pressed, into learning how to attend to our own suffering, learning how to attend to our own pain, then we can shore up those skills so we can automatically, call on a regulation or stabilization exercise in the middle of our busy day. And make sure when we're not attending to someone difficult or a difficult situation that we take care of ourselves, get enough sleep, make sure we're healthy so that when we know we're going to be pressed, we're in better shape. So I'll defer more discussion of some of these challenging situations to another time, and I'm sure Shireen will touch on some of it and she's going to talk about stabilizing. I would like to take us through, in the time I have left, a brief self-compassion meditation. And so I'd like to invite you. We're going to start with compassion for a loved one as a starting point. So you'll see how this works. I'll guide you through. So if you're in the audience or you're watching this later, take a breath. Make sure you give yourself an opportunity to find a comfortable posture. Any meditation practice, even if it's just a few minutes long, you need to stabilize the body. If the body is comfortable and stable, the mind will more readily follow. And it's very important to have the mind settling before we start any particular meditation technique. So giving yourself an opportunity to see, maybe if you're in a chair, put your feet flat on the floor rather than crossing a leg. Or maybe you're on the floor on a cushion, whatever's most comfortable for you. Letting your hands rest comfortably on your legs or in your lap. And inviting in a slow, deep, cleansing breath. Really luxuriating in that in-breath, bringing it deep into your chest and belly and allowing your body to expand, to open, to get bigger from that in-breath, because spaciousness makes more room for everything. You can literally become bigger on an in-breath. And then very slowly taking time on the out-breath and thinking of that out-breath as a letting go, a relaxation of that in-breath. Letting your weight settle through the chair, down to the earth, letting the earth support you. And maybe another deep cleansing breath. Take a couple more of these. Again, slow on the in-breath, slowly filling. Feeling the space inside and allowing yourself to notice that before you slowly release. Taking your time to let go. Letting the weight settle down through your seat, your feet, the floor, the ground. And if you like another one of those, And then just allowing your breath to settle into its natural rhythm, meaning letting go of any effortful control over the breathing and letting the body just breathe the way it amazingly knows how to do. And if breath focus isn't helpful for you, just letting go of the deep breathing and reside comfortably in your seat, noticing the feeling of being connected to the floor. So either noticing those sensations of being connected to the earth or simply tuning in for a moment or two to the feeling of being inside a naturally breathing body. And just noticing the soft rhythm there, the movement of the in-breath and the out-breath. And letting your awareness rest on whatever sensation of breathing is most accessible to you. It could be the feeling of the air moving in through the nose and out through the mouth, or the gentle rising and falling of the chest and belly. Just see what you notice, and whatever comes up first is fine. No big deal. Just being present with the breath, and otherwise just abiding in this internal space with whatever's there. No judgment. You might notice lots of thoughts. You might get distracted. That's okay. No big deal. Gently bringing your awareness back to the breath if you notice you've been distracted, with a light attention to the sensations of breathing, not a gripped focus. Otherwise, just being here, inside the breathing body. And coming back if you've noticed the mind stray. And that's okay if you do. This is where we can do a little self-compassion. If you see the mind get distracted by a sound or a sensation or a thought, no big deal. Brains make thoughts. That's what they do. You can kind of laugh at that and gently escort your attention back to that sensation of the breath, like you're taking a little puppy who ran off, bringing it back home. Don't run off. That's a sweet gentleness you can have towards yourself. And as you're sitting here in this breathing body, connecting to what brought you here, maybe some interest in building your compassion and learning some self-care, and the goodness in your heart around that. And inviting into this internal space someone who's dear to you, who's easy to be with, who you care about just automatically. It could be any loved one. It could be a person. It could be your pet. Not to make a big deal about who you pick, just whoever naturally arises is probably just fine for this purpose. And inviting this being, whoever you thought of, this dear one, into the space of your mind and heart. Can you visualize them here with you right now? So see if you can bring them to mind rather vividly. And if you can't visualize them, just imagine their felt presence. See if you can conjure some sense of having them with you. And notice how it feels to have them with you. Notice the feelings you have for them, that you want the best for them, You want them to be happy. You want them to be safe. And knowing that they, like you and everybody else, goes through difficulty, they might have some suffering, like they surely do, because everyone does. We all suffer in some way, whether it's physical illness or psychological challenges or financial troubles, whatever that might be. See how you feel noticing that they go through difficulty and that you want the best for them. Let that touch your heart. And in this space of caring about this dear one and wanting them to be safe and free and healthy, in your mind, silently sending them a few sentiments. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you find peace. Or some version of those phrases. You can customize the language if you like. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you find peace. So reciting those a couple times and just letting what naturally emerges in your heart as you send these wishes to this dear one, allowing that to just flow out of you to them, your wishes for their well-being, for their safety, for their ease. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you find peace and joy. And then maybe letting go of the phrases and just feeling, being in this space with this dear one and these sentiments for them. Sending out your wishes for their well-being, for their ease, for their safety. And then maybe allowing this dear one to gently fade or move to the background of your awareness, sitting there with all these wishes for their safety, well-being, ease, freedom from suffering. And experiment with reflecting some of that back to yourself, to your own pain, to your own difficulty. Maybe there's something as concrete as your sore knee that you can send it to, or just this difficult situation that you might be going through right now, or just generally the stuff of life. May I be okay. Sending to yourself, noticing that you suffer just like your dear one. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I find peace and joy. And what's nice is even if your loved one is still kind of in the background of your mind, they are there. You can use their kindness to support you here. This is all fair game in the space of mind. Anything is possible. You can imagine them sending you good stuff to help you heal, or just feeling the energy of their love. You can send to yourself the good stuff that you are sending to a dear one, letting some of that warm goodness of your heart awash over you. Breathing in to fuel the fire of the beautiful flame of your compassionate heart, and breathing out warmth, kindness, letting it land all over you. May I be free. May I be free from suffering. May I be happy. May I find peace and joy. So I'm going to be silent for a minute here and keep reciting these phrases for yourself. Just having a kind of faith in the power of the words to train your mind and body to feel this way. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I find peace and joy. Just continuing on with that for a bit longer. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I find peace and joy. And now, gently, when you're ready, letting go of the phrases and just feeling into the space of heart opened and softened, hopefully by this exercise, and letting the love and concern and compassion radiate out to not just touch you and your loved one, but all beings. May there be benefit. May we all find happiness and freedom from suffering. And when you're ready, gently opening your eyes if they were closed and re-engaging with this space. And noting how you're feeling right now. If you, as I said, I may not have said this, but if you have any questions about any of this, reactions or questions about the practice, we'll have a little time when we're done talking to address those. I want to say one more thing about what we've done and about this topic of compassion fatigue. Take 1 minute before handing it over to Shireen. And, we started by saying that the compassion fatigue is a misnomer in some way. And that's just to say, we named all this kinds of distress and difficulty in compassionate situations to be concerned about, to know about, and to be able to tend to. And self-compassion helps with that, as will the grounding exercises that Shireen goes through. But also to say that compassion itself, when you're truly shored up and abiding in the space of compassion, it is infinite, is energizing, and it's not exhausting. It's just in the space of working with suffering, we encounter a lot and we go through a lot and we need to tend to it. May some of what we offer here be helpful to you. Thank you for your time and for your practice. And I am going to hand the Zoom microphone over to my dear colleague, Shireen Mansouri. Shireen, you want to come on screen? Hi. Thank you, everybody. I'll be back around when it comes to question time. You're in good hands.
Thanks, Erica. I actually really appreciated the self-compassion meditation because for me, Erica was one of my instructors. So talking and following on from her, I need a little bit of self-compassion to be able to do that. So thank you. And a lot of what I've learned from Erica. So I think as both Apro and Erica named, that term compassion fatigue it's been really important in my career, in my life, because I needed something to describe how I felt when I felt that overwhelm. Not even sure I called it overwhelm, but when I felt that feeling of distress with what I was experiencing. And in fact, when I first took compassion cultivation training, my initial instructor, when he said there is no such thing as compassion fatigue, I felt like I wanted to challenge him to a duel over that because so much of what I felt I was wrapped up in that term. But as Erica said, when we're truly in compassion, when we've sensed the suffering, we've named the suffering, we've been able to stay with the suffering, and we've been able to then reach out and help in some way and move into compassion, that willingness to help, that is an infinite feeling. It is a feel-good feeling. Neurophysiologically has been shown to show up different ways in our body and in our brains. And it's a positive, compassion is a positive emotion. So whereas empathy for suffering can be felt as pain, just like empathy for joy can be felt as joy, compassion itself is felt as a positive emotion. And so how can you fatigue a positive emotion? technically you can't. So compassion is this regenerative well that you can just keep dipping into and you can strengthen it over time. But we need a term for what we were feeling. Now, Erika has offered the term personal distress or distress in some way. Sometimes it's called empathic distress, but some sort of distress feeling. Compassion fatigue, or sorry, compassion, as I've said, it's a positive feeling. But we need, in order to make that move is the most important thing. How do we move from distress into compassion, into that more positive feeling? And again, we need to back up that one step, like Erika said, and notice that there's emotions behind that. And it's that noticing and understanding what we're feeling that I think is so important, because unless we notice it, we can't name it as distress and then move into that compassion. And that beautiful sort of circles of growth and overwhelm, I would suggest that a lot of us spend a lot of our lives in overwhelm and we don't even notice it. It's been so normalized. I definitely know in the medical culture, for those that have trained clinically, but I suspect even in many other cultures, it has just been normalized to operate in this state of overwhelm all the time. So then we don't even notice when we're in distress. What does it actually feel like when we're in distress? And that's where some of these grounding techniques can come in that I'm going to get into. So in order to make that move from empathy to compassion, what's really important is actually to notice when we feel that distress. And then when we feel that distress and notice it, knowing how to come back into more of one of those realms of growth or possibly comfort. How do we re-regulate ourselves? How do we ground ourselves? And this can be done in a number of different ways. And what's, I think, really important is for people to sort of find what is it that works for them. Many people already have these tools. You're already doing it. You may not either realize it, you may not have named it, or you may not be doing it formally. I also think about, and we talk a lot in compassion cultivation training around informal versus formal practices. And it's very much like going to the gym. You do a formal practice as if you were going to the gym or you were doing some training, just like you're not going to suddenly get up one day and run a 10K race. You're going to train and you're going to start with 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. Or if you're lifting weights, you're going to start with a 1 pound weight. You're not going to suddenly go to the 20 pound weight. So you go to the gym or you do your training on a daily basis or semi-regular basis in order to build that muscle. So whether that be an actual physical muscle, whether it be the muscle of compassion, whether it be the muscle of presence, of embodiment, so that in your daily life, it's much easier to access. It's no different than when I talk with patients and we talk about some of these grounding strategies. You're not going to suddenly start using it when you're in an anxious mood or when you're under stress. It's easier to practice doing them when you're comfortable, when you're calm, hopefully at home in a safe space, so that when you're in those times of pressure and load, it's easier to access them. And I think back when I think about grounding, there's a few things that come to mind around how important it is. One of the things I think about is the Thich Nhat Hanh quote about the Vietnamese refugee boats and how all it would take would be one person that could stay calm and grounded to save the lives of everybody in that boat. So all it takes is that one person. And I know that I didn't hear the quote until after I did my emergency medicine training, but it so resonated with that when you're dealing with very, very intense situations. All you needed was that one clinician, that one person that could hold their ground and calmly be there for everybody to help bring the whole room into regulation, and everything went smoother. So these grounding techniques seem simple, but they're not necessarily easy, and they're not necessarily easy to access at any given time. So I'm going to take you through a few different techniques. We're going to sort of string them together. So you're going to try each one of them. And if one of them resonates, you can take it and start practicing it. And then the trick will be figuring out like where in my day can I fit this? Where can I be doing it informally during my day to practice it? One of my favorite things to talk about is what can I be doing, for instance, while my computer is logging in? Every time I log in my computer, it's going to take 30 to 60 seconds. Can I use that time to ground and regulate myself? What about every time I'm washing my hands? What about every time I'm walking down a hallway? Anytime you have those little tiny slivers of time in your day, can you be practicing some of these skills? So I'm going to invite you now, if you're in a situation where you're comfortable to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. If not, just drop your gaze or look at something that you don't need to focus on, something not distracting. And I'm going to invite you to actually pay attention to your feet on the ground. Most people will be sitting, maybe standing. Just pay attention to your feet on the ground. Notice the solidity of that. And you can think about the ground supporting your feet. And it really doesn't matter where you are. That ground is always there for you. So that feeling of the ground, of the earth supporting you. You might also feel it with your seat in the chair and the feeling of your chair supporting you. And this literal groundedness is something that you can come back to at any time. You might also notice the touch points of your arms on a table or on your lap, of your thighs on the chair, maybe your back against the chair. Wherever you are, noticing the touch points of your body. And now I'm going to invite you to take a few deep breaths. You might want to breathe in through your nose, let it out through your mouth. And as you breathe in, maybe count to 3. And as you breathe out, count to 4. Breathing in for the count of 3. Breathing out for the count of 4. Just lengthening that out breath ever so slightly. And we'll do one final breath like this, and then let it completely out like a big sigh. And then let your breath drop into its own natural rhythm. You can let your breath breathe itself. You don't need to control it. But maybe just see if you can follow that breath with complete curiosity. Just watching it all the way in, all the way out. watching it with fascination. And if you notice your mind straying from the breath, just gently bring it back. Knowing again, as Erika said, that's the way your mind works. But again, following a few more breaths with that utter fascination of how your body just knows how to do this. And if you want to, you can continue just following the breath. Or you might want to start to pay attention to that one moment in time right at the end of your out breath, just before your body decides to breathe in again. Notice that tiny little moment, complete peace and equilibrium. And again, how your body knows when it's time to breathe in. For a few more breaths, just resting your attention on that brief moment. And now, as we come near the end of this practice, I'd like you to think of something that you're grateful for. Preferably something that's happened today, maybe something small. Could be the sun shining or a flower that you've seen, warm cup of coffee, someone's smile. Think about that moment. Think about the emotion that you felt in that moment. Rest in that emotion. And then dropping any imagery, coming back to your breath or your feet. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into this space. So there were a number of very short practices there that you might want to play around with, experiment with. The term practice is used intentionally because it is always a practice. I have to practice it every single day. And then that moment of gratitude, that positive feeling that can come. And I just want to throw out the word compassion satisfaction, which is a term that can be used for this warm glow that you feel when you've experienced compassion. And noticing that and spending some time with it is one of the things that feeds compassion and makes it limitless. So I think with that, what I'd like to do is invite Erika to come back on the screen and maybe open it up to questions if we've got questions, Apro, because I want to leave enough time for discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erica and Shireen, for your fantastic presentation and bringing such clarity and depth and practicality to this conversation. So I've got a question for you all. One is, so once we've tapped into the compassion muscle, and we felt some confidence in working with it. What do we do when we feel our compassion capacity or our personal capacity is falling short?
Do you want to take this, Shireen?
I feel like it's totally my answer is self-compassion.
Yeah, yeah. And then
So
also, yeah, go ahead, and then I have something to add to that. Yeah.
yeah, so I think it's around, first of all, Apro used the term falling short. So am I judging myself for feeling like I'm not compassionate enough? And then noticing, like, have I been giving myself compassion? So if I'm feeling like I'm not able to give the compassion outwards, is there an imbalance of compassion for self and other? And the importance of having that be balanced. Um, yeah. So, Erica, if you've got anything else to say about that.
Well, I was just thinking how both of our topics work together because it can be an act of self-compassion to remember to ground. So in that moment, if you're feeling overwhelmed or whatever, to then call on these skills that you've been practicing, right? So that the whole idea of the practice is to make them readily available when you need them, so that could, it's a gesture of self-compassion. It's an expression of self-compassion to then use what you've got in your toolkit to take care of yourself. And stabilization, that was a great little set of practices. I really enjoyed that. And thank you for offering the terms compassion satisfaction. What a great, balance to the concept of compassion fatigue. Yeah.
And I'll just go on my I realize I didn't talk about one of the downsides to using compassion fatigue is this deficit
It,
mindedness that it
totally.
comes from, right? So it's this idea that compassion is finite and I need to guard it at all costs
Right.
versus Erica, what you said about it's limitless.
Yeah.
And so I found when I trained, I mean, we have all these negative deficit minded terms in medicine, but can we start using some more abundance minded terms? And compassion satisfaction is one of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for adding that.
I think we have time for one more question, maybe getting some feedback from you both. This is in a way related to your reflections on the first question. Why is self-compassion so hard?
Well, I'll say something about that. I think this is like an hour-long talk at least, right? And anybody who's taught compassion has had to deal with this. I think, and a lot of it is culturally specific. I mean, we are we have this weird thing in this society, at least in this American culture that we're in. On the one hand, we were founded on individualism, so we elevate the individual. On the other hand, we look down on anything that's self-directed, like it's egoism or narcissism or selfishness. And so we don't have a healthy relationship with self-care. So there's that twisted thing, right? And there's we don't really train in recognizing the problem and realizing that there's a big difference between self-compassion and being selfish, that we tend to, instead of put ourselves on the same level as everybody else, we're all just going through this thing together, we all don't want to suffer, we want to be free and comfortable and have ease, that instead we put ourselves below, like we're not worthy of it. And there's also this other problem that I encounter a lot because of this mistaken notion of it's selfish for somehow. Is it selfish to just treat us all the same? No, it's not, right? So can we bring that up to equal playing ground? The other thing behind it, I've encountered a lot in teaching compassion, is that some people feel like, well, I have very high standards for myself. I want to excel, and so I have to be critical of myself. And there's one thing about having standards and having goals that you want to achieve for yourself, that actually can be an expression of self-compassion because you're valuing your personal development. However, if you get involved in denigrating, think about, I love how one of the easy exercises in self-compassion is to take some of that self-talk and imagine that you're giving it to a good friend. Would you say some of these things, these judgmental things that we say to ourselves, oh, you're so stupid, you blew it, you idiot, or whatever that is, would we say that to a dear friend or to our child or something like it? No, not unless you don't want to have any friends, right? So you don't do that. And so that's a great little thing anybody can try to take some of that negative self-talk and try to flip it back on your friends, and realize, oh, I'd never do that. So the task at hand is simply treating yourself as you would a good friend. And I love the phrase that one of my most beloved teachers, Pema Chodron, uses in talking about self-compassion, basically taking the way she does, makes everything super clear. She talks about self-compassion as befriending yourself just as you are right now. Warts and all, whatever, just as you would for someone you love and care about. You're their friend. You're not saying, oh, you have to be perfect or I won't be your friend, right? Just be there with you. And if we can kind of get some of these things in mind to demystify it, not make it into like adulation for the self or elevating the self, is just being nice to yourself like you would a good friend, then it makes it a lot easier to get on board.
Yeah, thanks. That's all of that, and I agree. It's a cultural thing around societal, how we phrase things, how we've grown up, what's been expected of us. And the only thing I'll throw out is something I talk about a lot in my classes. There's a professor of nursing that does a lot of work at Johns Hopkins around moral injury, and she uses the term. Her name is Cinda Rushton, and she uses the term self-stewardship.
Ah,
And I think
nice.
that is a beautiful inroad to self-compassion because it's what do I need for myself in order to show up in the world the way I want to? And I think it comes around some of the negative pieces around self-care. So again, language is important to me, and that's a particular term that I like.
Mm,
Did you see that was
fantastic.
Cinda Rushton?
Cinda
I
Rushton.
wrote that down. That's great. I love that. Self-stewardship. See, we're all learning all the time, and I love learning from my fellow teachers. Um, yeah, so thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody who tuned in here. We hope to see you in one of our classes this coming
A-
fall.
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of, so thank you, Erica and Shireen, again, and thank you to you all who joined or are watching later and really, taking the time to trust us with your heart, with your questions, with your reflections. In just a moment, Trisha will put up our upcoming online CCT courses. So if today's conversation has made you more curious, or maybe you're left a little confused, wondering, how do I actually do this? What does this look like? And I want to explore this further. We have a number of courses coming up, and these are systematically designed to cultivate compassion. So we invite you to join both Erica and Shireen, our leading courses coming up this fall. Uh, Erica will be teaching our tried and true compassion cultivation training. It's an 8-week course, 2 hours a week, and you'll get to spend time with her and also be in community with others who are looking to develop this further in their lives. And Shireen is going to be leading a similar course that's focused for folks who are working in healthcare. So it's a bit shorter. It's a 1 hour session, again, 8 weeks. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. The information is there. But again, thank you all for joining. And I'll pass it to you, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Opero. Just heartfelt gratitude to Erica and Shireen for guiding us all through these crucial, crucial tools that can just unveil so much capacity within ourselves. So thank you for that stewardship. Opero, thank you for guiding us through and moderating this session. I want to thank Trisha Liu for tech support for putting this together, as well as Jonathan Ayala, program manager here at CI. Lastly, thank you all of you for being here. Wishing you well, and please stay in touch with us.